Privet, Katila, ya, ni хорошо. Because today we're going to be talking about everybody's favorite topic, reparations. Yes, a very fun topic indeed. So, reparations used to be a pretty fringe idea, and nobody really took it seriously. Well, that was until this election. Now, I'm not just talking about mystical orb lady who wants to spend $200 to $500 billion in reparations and align everyone's chakras and have us be reborn within the egg of life in the spirit realm. It's not just, batshit insane candidates that are for it, but actually some top-tier candidates that have come out for it, such as Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren, Julian Castro, and Cory Booker. Now, are they just saying that they are supporting reparations to get black votes in the critical Democratic primary? Probably. So, because what they support is either a commission to study it, or funds to invest in forgotten communities. Now, those things aren't reparations in the original sense of the term, but they will call it that to try to get the black vote. But regardless do they actually want reparations or not, it is troubling to see how it has risen to becoming a mainstream position when even Barack Obama opposed it, and it was just an outlier fringe position. But now it seems it has just become another Democratic talking point. There was also a hearing done in the Senate in the House Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties, where they discussed on ways to bring about reparations. So it's now a serious idea that is being discussed in our government, at least in the U.S. government. So, in this video, I will try to lay out my case on why reparations is both practically and morally a bad idea. What I'm arguing for is the true meaning of reparations, meaning the government provides money or other services in order to repay or repair the damage done for a historic wrong, in this case slavery. So first, a few questions that need to be answered. First, who gets the money exactly? Black people? Okay, but what if you are, say, Kamala Harris, and your mom is from India and your dad is Jamaican? What if you're totally black, but you're a recent immigrant from Nigeria? What if you're a white, but you are, say, 12% black, and that black side was the descendant of slaves? What if you're Somalian, and you married an African American who was a descendant of slaves, and your kid is fully black, but only half African American? Do they get money? What if the black ancestors owned slaves themselves? On the flip note, for example, on the other side, who pays for this large amount of cash? For example, Darity from Duke University, who is a supporter of reparations, who studies this issue, says it will cost between $6.4 and $14 trillion. So who has to pay for this large amount of money? Well, white people? The government? If it's the government, it's going to have to raise a lot of taxes on people who have nothing to do with slavery. Hispanics, Asians, and even blacks. But let's say you're just going to stick it to the white man and only raise their taxes. Okay, but what about if you immigrated or your parents immigrated to America in the last few decades from Europe and your family was never here for slavery? Do you pay even if you and your lineage weren't even here for slavery? What if you're Polish or you're Russian? Anyway, what if your lineage does go back to the founding of the country, or at least before the mid-1800s, but your family did not even own a single slave? Down the South, only 1 out of 5 people even owned a slave, and that's not even counting the people in the North. What if, say, your dad's side was from the early roots of America, and your mom's a recent white immigrant from, say, the Soviet Union? I'm fully white, but do I only pay up half since half my side was not here even during slavery? The most straightforward way is to track down every single person who is 100% a descendant of slaves and had no slaves themselves, and track down every white person who has 100% of his or her lineage in the past that owned slaves, and force them to pay up for the other. And to that I say good luck. We can't even track the people who come through our borders in the modern time. Plus, even if we could, there is no legal basis for generational guilt. What if your great-great-great-grandfather raped, tortured, and murdered my great-great-great-grandmother? Do you owe me if he got away with it? Of course not. That is ridiculously absurd and stupid. So the idea that current descendants of slaves and slave owners need to repay the debt has no legal, moral, or logical argument. Another argument that I hear a lot is that black slaves were the backbone of the economy and built the entire country of the United States. And because of them being taken from Africa, and that they came here, and that they built the nation through slavery, they deserve the money back for their labor. This argument is monumentally stupid and dumb. The foundation of America, of what made America rich, was the industrial and pioneering spirit of freed white persons, mostly in the North. The reason why the North kicked the South's ass and won in the Civil War was because of the industrial development, the extra manpower, the bigger industrial and mining base, greater transport, especially the railroads, greater education. Not only that, it produced far more agriculture on the whole than the South did. 60% of all livestock, 67% of corn, 81% of wheat, and in total controlled 75% of the nation's wealth. So no, it was not slaves that built the wealth of America. And keep in mind, only 1 out of 5 people even owned slaves in the South, so not everything in the South was produced by slave labor, and thus made even the South rich. But even the literal slave owners made at most a 15% profit off of slaves. Keep in mind that slaves have been well documented to be very unreliable. And they were required to be fed, clothed, sheltered, given health care, etc. If they were so productive, why are other nations like Brazil that had more slaves per capita and in total numbers not as rich as America? Why is Haiti not rich? Why is Sub-Saharan Africa, which did not abolish slavery till the late 20th century, extremely undeveloped when nations like Germany are economic powerhouses and never had slaves? What people also don't realize is that in the African slave trade, overall, about 100 million people were treated as slaves within Africa alone between 1525 and 1866. Another 25 million went to the Arab world in India, and only about 14.2 million came to the Americas. And of that 14 million, only between 4 to 6% actually came to the United States of America. So no, we did not cause the slave trade. It was Africans selling Africans to others, mostly to other Africans. However, if you look at how these slaves would have been if they were not brought to America in the first place, the average per capita of a black in America is about $40,000. In Sub-Saharan Africa, that average rate is about $2,000. The literacy rate of blacks around 1870 was 20%. However, Sub-Saharan Africa did not reach that rate until the 1950s, a full 80 years later. Along with this, their lifespan was on par with average European countries at the time, and only about 4 years less than the most elite lifespans of the world at the time, that being U.S. whites and Englishmen. So, in terms of reparations, where we are trying to repair or restore to a prior state, we can conclude that no, America did not benefit from slave use. In fact, if anything, it was a net loss for this country, and it did not build the wealth of America. And while the treatment of them was unjust, it does not justify hundreds of years later fleecing the ancestors of those who did wrong. Plus, blacks are monumentally more advanced and given greater opportunity and development than if they had stayed in Africa. And this is much to the expense of this country. So, this is not a justification of them being forcefully brought over. However, in the terms of reparations, which means restoring to a previous state, it would mean that them getting taken from Africa was a net loss for them. And no, this is shown not to be true. So the morality and feasibility that they deserve repayment for their ancestors' unjust treatment is both wrong and flawed, and the argument that they built the wealth of America on their backs is also 100% incorrect. I also want to say that the mere existence of inequality does not justify some sort of repayment. Inequality today is a result of either one's genetics and the inherent differences between people groups, but if you think that's a little bit too okay, then okay. It can also be a factor of values, decisions, and cultures, and the way groups operate. Asians in America used to be oppressed, yet today they in fact have a higher standard of living than even whites do. This is because of the decisions they made, not because of systematic systems of structural institutions or whatever. It was because of themselves. Now riddle me this, and this is a hot take. Reparations have already been paid in full. Should I even have to bring up the hundreds of thousands of whites who had to suffer and die and bleed for the cause of liberation? Does the destruction and suffering of those hundreds of thousands of men enough as they fought for the liberation of blacks? Also, if you look at the net fiscal effect of ethnic groups with the United States in 2014, for example, blacks per capita are $10,000 net negative fiscal impact, while whites are net positive $2,000 fiscal impact. And since the 60s, trillions of dollars have been spent on a mass scale in terms of food stamps, Section 8 housing, Medicaid, and other types of welfare programs on black people mostly, disproportionately from white taxpayers. And let's also discuss about quotas or affirmative action, where simply because they are black they get to get a job or go into college with lower scores, or if you are a black-owned business you get certain benefits in government contracts and in the tax code. So to conclude, there is no moral or legal argument for generational guilt and blame, and the implementation would be practically impossible, and the idea that slavery was what built America is utterly made up and not even close to reality. Reparations would further bring about racial animosity and would simply be another anti-white program to fleece white people, for benefits to be given to minorities, and it is widely unpopular with the public as a whole. We have also learned that blacks have been disproportionately helped by being in America and are a net fiscal cost to the country, and that reparations have already been paid in full in both blood, sweat, money, and general hardship. So that was my little video, I guess you could say, on why I think reparations is a bad idea. If you liked it, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more videos like this. And if you really liked it, check out my Patreon. So aim high, wander on, from America with Russian love.